How's it going, everybody? My name is Cole Harvey. Welcome to the first episode of my new podcast I'm trying out about anything related to comics, graphic novels, manga, or anything of that sort. This is actually not the live recording because I failed to mention a couple important things when I introduced myself that time. So, first thing, we're going to be spoiling the book. We're going to be talking about the plot and just all the minor details that we could think of. So, if you're not interested in that, I would stop here or read the book first. Secondly, obviously, everything we're saying is subjective and just opinion because this is art. So please don't be offended by anything we say in this or any future podcast because obviously it's different for everybody. So won't take up any more of your time. Thank you for listening. Here is the live recording.
Yeah, sure. My name's Fahed Rahman, and this podcast will be kind of talking about different graphic novels that we've both come across. And yet, the first one indeed will be the graphic novel "Springtime in Chernobyl" by Emmanuel Lepage.
So I guess I'll start with how I found this. So when I first got into comics, I noticed that it was clear that French artists were much better than American artists. And I was just honestly just perusing through French artists, just a massive list. I didn't seek this out or anything, and I just had noticed that his kind of painting and very moody style seemed pretty amazing. I didn't even know the contents of the book at all. I didn't know it was nonfiction. I had no idea. I just ordered it. What about you? Have you ever heard anything about this or the author before this podcast?
I I had not come across either the author or the book before Cole suggested it. So yeah, it was a new one for me. But we'll talk little bit more about the book. But yeah, that's how I came across it. It was on Cole's suggestion.
All right, so the basic gist of the book, without spoilers, I don't know how I'd spoil this for you, but I don't think it's possible. But basically, Emmanuel Lepage is he's a comics artist. He's with a group of other artists of various fields, I guess. Yeah, there's poets, musicians, painters, stuff like that, and they decide they're going to take a trip to Chernobyl as I can't remember what the title of their group is called. The activist group, you know,
Yeah, what is it called?
something to the effect of like the active artists or like art activists, something like that.
Yes, yeah.
They decide to go in, take a trip into Chernobyl, share their
It's
thoughts.
called the illust. Oh, how do you pronounce that? Yeah, the illustrativists. That's what they're called.
Okay, there
Is
you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So they're gonna make a book, and all the funds are gonna go, I believe, to the people of Chernobyl. Is that right? Or what? Because they're originally doing this. This isn't the book that was made then. This isn't the book that was made uh, as the statement and to raise money or anything. But a lot of the images I figured out from that book, which was called Flowers of Chernobyl, are in this book.
Oh, okay. I think that they were doing either fundraising or to try and raise awareness around kind of the issues of nuclear energy, because at the start of the book, a lot of them are talking about protests that they've taken part in to sort of prevent the building of nuclear power
Nuclear
plants.
power,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's probably something around that.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, they're trying to raise awareness for the dangers of nuclear power. But and we have a couple main characters. They're all just part of his group. I'm not going to name them all, but a big one is Gilda, who is the bald artist man in here that's in a lot of the pages, and he and Emmanuel Lepage are the ones that made Flowers in Chernobyl, which I would never try and purchase because it's about $500 now. But
Oh, that's
yeah,
expensive, isn't it? Oh,
yeah, it's just like
wow.
a one-time printing thing, of course. So that's probably why. But looking at it, I could see, yeah, it was his Gilda and Emmanuel's art in there, and a lot of the art in there actually that was by Emmanuel gets repurposed for this. So we're not missing out a ton. But essentially, there is no plot further than that. They're just wandering around, kind of looking at the present state of these places around Chernobyl. Do you think there's any real plot here?
I think there is a slight sort of plot with Emmanuel before the event, kind of struggling with his confidence about why he's been asked to join on this expedition, and the problem that he had with his hand, and then kind of when he gets there, he kind of, I think his confidence builds up, and like the pain in his hands go, but there's not much. Yeah, there's not much kind of like this guy has got this goal at the end that he's struggling to achieve throughout the story. There's not much of a plot in that way, I don't think. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we're not
it
trying to like overcome anything physically. Like, no, there's no
is,
bad guy or yeah.
there's no kind of like emotional obstacle internally that he has to kind of overcome. It's more a story about this guy going to this place and discovering things perhaps that he wasn't expecting to be
Mm-hmm.
there. I think that's kind of one of the major themes of the book. Yeah.
And that part with the the very first time that the hand is introduced, his hand starts to cramp and basically lock up, and he's not able to draw. He's in immense pain, and that's right before his trip to where they're going. I guess just the Chernobyl area,
Yeah.
and that actually starts right after he's planned the trip, and it doesn't alleviate until he's basically there. So you kind of have to wonder. And he tries all these crazy methods to get his hand to just work. He does like acupuncture and some crazy types of medicine. I have no idea what they mean, and nothing works. He can't draw, so he brings like charcoals, soft pencils, and brushes and stuff. Which I assume, unless this is his normal style, I guess I don't know, is why this book takes I guess, the visual stance that it does. It's all kind
Yes.
of painterly and brushy, not a lot of like hard pencil lines.
Well, I did a little bit of reading around Lepage, lots of reviews of Lepage's kind of work, and one of the things that a lot of people do comment on is that he has got like a kind of interesting line style, and he's an excellent colorist as well, which I think probably adds to kind of like the painterly kind of influence. But yeah, yeah, maybe that's also a major factor into why we need to have a comparison with some of his other works. I think to kind
That's
of make
very
that,
true.
yeah, to make that sort of comparison, and that the decision on that. Yeah.
If I were to open another of his books and it was like a pencil, like a primarily penciled thing, I don't even know if I would recognize it, because this is just, you can barely see the lines over all the shadows on this book. Uh,
Yes,
so
it's
I'm very interested.
very well inked. I mean, the only character that you can really, for me, that repeatedly appears where you can kind of tell that there's a lot of line work put into him is Gilda. Really,
Yes.
he's got kind of a lot of almost classical Marvel DC style cross hatching on his face. That's noticeable. But apart from that, yeah, it is very cleanly inked, cleanly um, uh, lined as well.
I guess I never thought about that, but you're right. The just the sheer amount that Gilda shows up, and I guess the time that Emmanuel took to render him more thoroughly than everyone else. I think that shows either just a respect for Gilda as an artist, or maybe just that was the person he spent the most time with on this trip. Maybe that was just his one of his best friends on this trip. But I did notice Gilda's the most commonly used of his group.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he does kind of spend a lot of time with him, kind of in preparation and kind of on the journey itself. It's quite interesting about Gilda's face, because I think he kind of gives a lot of the other characters a lot more detail to their facial expressions than he does to his own
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
we were talking about that when we first read the book. I didn't even know. I thought Gilda was Emmanuel Lepage for the first 30 pages.
Yeah.
Um, because Gilda's just up in the front all the time. He's on page 6, which is like page 2 of the actual art, so he's right at the beginning. And I just thought that was our main guy. He just kind of stands out to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, and we was talking about before. You also mentioned that Lepage is quite often in those first few pages, well, from kind of 6 onwards, when we're on the train, he's often in the shadows, and Gilda's the character that's in the light as
Yeah.
well. So like his face is far more illuminated as well. So yeah,
You were mentioning earlier the theme of he kind of feels like a poser. He doesn't know why he's going there. He
yeah,
doesn't know what he's to gain from this, not economically, just in terms of his time. Um, but and at the beginning, that is the case. He feels that way, and he's covered in shadow. But throughout the book, he starts to realize why he's there, and he starts to become a part of the people there, I guess. And he's in the middle of panels now. He's in full color towards the end. He's not just laying in the shadow. He's surrounded by like a painted landscape. And I think maybe thematically that's just how he chooses to represent his belonging there.
yeah. I think also he uses color quite interestingly throughout the book. So most of the book is either, I wouldn't say black and white, but kind of like a grayish sepia type
Yeah.
coloring, and then he will occasionally, there'll be odd objects that will be in full color. So, for example, I'm looking at page 57 at the moment, and there's a man using a horse and cart, and there's radioactive barrels in the back. So the entire spread is kind of a sepia colored, but those barrels with a radioactive material are bright yellow and bright red. And he'll use kind of that color motif quite sparingly, where kind of an object in sort of, yeah, Chernobyl catches his eye, and he'll splash color on that. And then as
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of more gets more comfortable and realizes there's actually a lot of beauty in the area, he'll start using full color illustrations to kind of like show that. I mean, kind of for me, the first time that occurs is on the big 2-panel spread on pages 94 and 95, where he's
Is that
in the
the
woods.
almost the yeah that looks like it was reused for the cover because it's not the exact same image, but it is just about the same image as on the cover.
Yes.
He's got
Um,
a different color shirt, I guess, is one of the
yeah,
only differences.
yeah. So at this point, it should. So you've got the print copy of this, haven't
Yeah.
you? Like, so I read this with on a digital download, and I originally was reading on my iPad, um, and I didn't realize that a lot of the art relied on 2-page spreads, because I was only able to read on my iPad in a PDF format. And I was looking at the art. This doesn't look right, so it made me realize actually a lot of the art is on 2-page spreads. So I had to kind of download it in another format and read it on my MacBook. And this is kind of a bit of a geeky area for me, but I think as digital formats become more and more prevalent, I think it's, if you're an artist or a publisher and you're releasing your comics on a digital format, you kind of need to think about that from the ground up. It can't be, because you'll end up with experiences like what I had, where I didn't realize like I was missing out on the artwork. So that's kind of a big area of interest for me. But yes, it's, once I realized it was a stunning 2-page spread, the artwork started coming to life a little bit more.
And he does that quite a bit in here. So if that was a problem, like on whatever device you're reading, it would be kind of
Yes.
a constant problem. He does a lot of stuff where like a top panel might just creep into the second page, so it's not the entire 2-page spread, right? But then you're missing like what, a quarter of a panel
Yes.
because you need to turn the page. Um, and so I have it in print, and although I would never say that there's bad storytelling going on here, it actually happened to me anyway. Just the way that the left hand panels that are stacked here sometimes threw off my reading order of the panels. So I would sometimes skip to the right page and then realize I'm a completely far ahead, and that's probably a me thing, but it's not always clear.
So when it comes to comic book reading theory, the idea is that the panel should form like a Z formation.
Mm-hmm.
So it should go kind of like from left left to right, then you go diagonally down to the left again, across to the right, diagonally down. So with some of these two-page spreads, I'm looking at one on pages 114 and 115. I remember when I read this for the first time, I kind of I didn't realize I needed to read the panels across the entire two-page spread and then go back
Then go down.
diagonally, yeah, then So yeah, that's exactly what happened to you. Happened to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, I read the top panels on sort of page 141, then I went down diagonally to the next um, speech speech box on page 114 when I should have gone across to 115 and then gone back down across to 114.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's interesting use of kind of, if you know what the rules are and you break them, that kind of makes sense. But if you're reading comics for the first time, or even experienced readers like ourselves, there are a few double page spreads that are a little bit confusing.
I don't think that's ever like a handicap or a real issue. It's just kind of a thing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So like on that 114, that could easily be 2 pages, especially if you weren't to see the second page when you opened it. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a it's a tip. It happens
I
in a lot
think
of
it was.
comics. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I think it was around that time that I realized, this doesn't make any sense. This one page. So that's when I had to kind of like switch to a different
oh, that would worry me
different
if I
format.
was digitally reading. I'd go back and make sure I hadn't skipped like 3 splashes or something.
Yeah. So I did reread it again just to make sure that I didn't miss out on anything. And I did. There's a few double page spreads where I missed out on kind of the absolute beauty of the artwork that he's kind of um, put in.
And it is
Um,
beautiful. Oh my god.
yeah, it is. It's remarkably done. I was reading a little bit about his biography, and he kind of had his first artwork um, published in sort of like daily newspapers when he was like 16 years old. So this guy was obviously very hardworking, very talented, and I also believe he's been trained as an architect as well.
Wow, really?
So that's why a lot of the buildings in the book look so good. It's really difficult to draw buildings.
Yeah.
Actually, it's something that when you read interviews by artists, it's something they struggle with sometimes.
A
Um,
lot of the
some
a lot of the French and mangaka type people, they make it look so easy, and then in American comics they'll forgo an entire background. We won't even draw a single building, let alone some of the stuff he does in here. Um, like page 58 and then over to page
yes,
60
yeah,
is some of the best, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. Um, it doesn't look photorealistic, but it looks completely believable as a building, and it almost looks like a photograph, but it's barely even. There's not a lot of lines on those buildings. Like there's nothing he's doing to make it look overly rendered, but it looks exactly how it should look. I think he's kind of a master of like he's kind of a master of using like dark space to represent things when he's not actually using any lines there.
yeah. His lighting and coloring is exceptional, um, and I think he had to pay spend a lot of time with the builders because Chernobyl is like a central character in the
Oh yeah.
story. I think he was expecting kind of I think he goes on this mission to sort of like create artwork about Chernobyl, and his expectation is that he's going to be creating artworks that show the devastation and the degradation and the poverty of the people living in the area. And yeah, there is degradation and poverty, but he also finds kind of a lot of beauty. So yeah, a lot of these buildings are really run down, but there's a kind of also an enchanting quality to them as well. Kind of that um, rundown sort of feeling of a lot of the buildings and sort of the ruination of the city. So yeah, it's he had to kind of spend a lot of time drawing that, I suspect.
Yeah, I think he definitely took his time. You can tell, like what I said earlier, he has some images from that other book, which I assume most of which were done kind of on site, like during his trip. I know a couple. I know one for sure that I will point out when I find the page, but the rest I think would be easily found. So page 68 and 69, there's a bottom panel that's a spread that is in
Yes.
Flowers of Chernobyl, leading me to believe he drew that as he was walking around that area. And that's kind of he does that a couple times here. There's these have to be like crayon trees drawn with crayon and landscapes that are just barely rendered, but just gorgeous because of his coloring. A lot of this stuff, and I swear he's using like 3 to 4 different styles here. He's using a couple
Yes.
times heavy pencils. Oftentimes he's doing that typical grayscale kind of washy look, and then he's got watercolors in here. He's got crayons. It's crazy.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about what actually happens to Lepage. So arrives in he arrives in Chernobyl, and he basically these guys are telling him there's certain areas that you can go. Kind of the disaster, the way it happened, kind of leaves some spots that are safe, and then spots next to it that aren't safe. So they have to carry out this piece of machinery to let them know kind of where the radiation is. And he gets there. He arrives in Chernobyl, does these initial drawings, and then they're renting out this empty house, and they're staying with a translator, and they're worried that found quite an interesting bit. Kind of, they're worried about whether or not they should accept food when they're invited in to be guests at other people's house, and they just kind of like decide to dive in.
Screw it,
So
we might as well, yeah.
yeah, and then he starts drawing the locals, and I think that's the point where I think it kind of something kind of switches for him. Really, kind of him kind of meeting, having that. There's a big sort of like sing song around pages 81. I think that's the first kind of sort of get together that they have. And then he just slowly starts meeting other people there, exploring the different areas, and then interacting with the children and other people that are living around the Chernobyl area.
Because he has multiple kind of at least one or two get-togethers with groups of people in this, and both times it's full of music and food and laughter, and it doesn't seem the coloring of it would make it seem like it was dreary if there was no word balloons or anything, but uh, yeah, that must be where he realizes that this place isn't all bad because these people live here and they're having a better time than him.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
I liked that a lot. That if there's anything that would be opening his eyes, it would be that.
yes. There was one character that kind of stood out to me. I think he's got like a gold tooth. I think he's the
Oh,
husband
the
of
looter one?
yeah, the looter one. I was like, I want to read a story about his life. He seems like a quite interesting gentleman, kind of like going into a radioactive wasteland to kind of find things to kind of like sell on the black market. That seems like quite an interesting character, and he seems sort of like quite gregarious and kind of like, if I get something happens to me, whatever happens to me is going to happen to me. It's kind of like I'm not a kind of, I feel like I've had like uncles that have got that same sort of attitude. You know what I mean? So, whatever it is, it's kind of it's kind of a bit laissez faire towards the risks that he's taking. But to him, he lives in that area. That's
It's
just
just his
normal.
job, yeah. I
Yeah.
love the part when Manuel asks him, or maybe it was his friend Pascal. I can't tell from the art exactly, but he asks why he's taking that stuff and who would buy it, and he said, you guys buy it in the United States." And like the Westerners buy it, and I was like, "Oh my God, they really they asked for more than they could handle there." I feel like.
Yeah, why would you want stuff? Anyway,
Considering my
people.
perception here, I guess of Chernobyl in America, if a lot of people read that America or European countries were the ones buying all that scrap, they would be like, "What the hell are you doing?" Because they don't
Yeah,
teach us that it's all right there. It's supposed to be a wasteland.
yeah, and I think that's kind of the central assumption. I think that the book is trying to kind of tackle that. The first section of the first, I think, 5 or 6 pages are him describing exactly what happened in the Chernobyl disaster, and he's got all these built up assumptions about kind of what he's going to find there, and then obviously those assumptions are kind of first challenged by the people
Mm.
that he meets, and then kind of as he explores the landscape a bit more, that he finds it beautiful
I think it's
as well.
kind of broken up, not exactly halfway, but the first half before the color starts to seep in seems almost like his expectations of Chernobyl, and then after he meets that first family, he he realizes, and then the second half becomes the reality of Chernobyl, where there's a lot of color, there's happy families. I mean, of course, there's obviously there's radiation and people get sick, and those things are going to happen, but people are living there and enjoying their lives, and that's kind of the second half. Whereas the first half is exactly what you think it'd be. It's history. It's straightforward. It's dark. He's walking through radioactive cities, and it's kind of like a whole chapter one, chapter two type deal to me, but it's not broken up that way in the book.
Yes. The other thing that so we're recording this in April of 2020, and for future listeners, we're currently going through the COVID-19
Mm-hmm.
pandemic. So a lot of the way the Ukrainian government handled the Chernobyl disaster had me feeling funny feelings about kind of, oh, this is a little bit too familiar
Yeah, yeah,
at the moment. Kind of a lot of disinformation about exactly how dangerous it is and what you should and shouldn't be doing, and
that's very
that
true.
sort of thing. Yeah.
I, I,
So I
I
was
think
just
I
like,
chose
oh,
not to think about that, but that is very true.
yeah. But then again, it just goes to show that these man-made natural disasters, life finds a way. Life finds ways of persevering and going on and adapting, and sort of human beings are very resilient
Mm-hmm.
in kind of all these circumstances. So even in an area like this, the people that choose to live there, they don't have to live there. They've been, I think they mentioned somewhere in the book, they've been given sort of like compensation and
Yeah,
options to kind of move elsewhere. But there's kind of old Russian ladies that have lived there their entire life, or other people that have kind of moved in because I was reading a newspaper article about Ukrainian refugees from the Crimea region actually moving to the Chernobyl area because there's actually nowhere else in Ukraine for them to live. So
wow, and it's probably cheap,
yeah,
I guess. That's
yeah, it'll be dirt cheap as well, kind of. So yeah, he actually mentions the house he rents out. I think is something ridiculously cheap, like
oh
40
yeah, it was
euros
like
a year, something like that. Yeah,
yeah, it was like 40 euros a week or something. What was that?
yeah,
I was like, oh my god,
yeah,
I don't use euros here, but I could tell I'd like to pay that for rent.
yes,
Like
yeah,
wow, I think what you're saying about these people being like hopeful and happy and they're choosing to stay here. I think the a different kind of reader, I'll say, maybe not wrong, but a different kind of reader could call that blissful ignorance. But these people are not ignorant in any way of their surroundings. Like the people from France ask him, they ask him all the time about the radiation. They're like, we know. I mean, it's not healthy. And the looter knows, but he just drinks his vodka. He goes to work. These people are choosing to live here, aware of the dangers because this is where they want to live. And I don't think that there's anything to knock about that. I think it's kind of an inspiring tale, I guess. A
yeah.
weirdly
I
inspiring
mean,
tale about how you should live in radiation. No,
yeah.
not that, but
No, I mean, there is kind of underlying hints that it is a very poor area, and kind of
oh yeah.
that small town like poverty is prevalent. And there are a couple of characters I'm specifically thinking. Looking at page 106, I can't remember what the name of the characters, but that young man, you kind of get the hint that he kind of, he doesn't really see that he's got any other options but to stay here. Doesn't really see that, he can actually move out and kind of explore the world a bit. That's kind of the hint. Well, maybe I'm reading too much into kind of like his body language, but there's a few kind of like characters like that where you think, well, they don't really see that they've got much option to move anywhere else, but there are some people choosing to stay there.
I think that's definitely right. That's the same kid that's like is thinking it's badass to go into the radiation without a mask on and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't remember his name either. Is it Vasily or Vasily?
yeah, I think it
One
might
of those.
be. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so definitely there's definitely a shift in the younger generation to the people who have lived there their whole lives. I can't
Yes,
imagine being born there and wanting to stay there your whole life, but also if you've lived there your whole life, I could see how you wouldn't want to leave.
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting.
That looter really interested me. You were right. He's a very interesting character. He knows
Yeah,
like he's like their main source of this crazy information, and you kind of can't tell if he's kind of putting it over the top and exaggerating a bit. But I would love to have a
yeah.
spin-off
You
book
don't know
about
how
him.
much.
You're right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It did. Yeah, how much is he actually bullshitting, or
Yeah.
how much of it is actually true? The other interesting part of the book that I found quite interesting is that the focus on children towards the end. So that they do a lot of him and Gilda go into schools a lot. I think towards the end of the book and kind of teach music lessons and art lessons to the children at the local schools. And there's a lot of especially towards the end of the books of a lot of scenes of Lepage sort of being pranked by the kids or going out and sort of like playing hide and seek or tag or drawing the children in the local area. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice for him to kind of do that. And obviously he's got I think a young family
Hmm.
at home as well.
I was surprised the lack of him talk. I'm sure it was there in his head the whole time, but he never really mentions that he misses his kids or his wife, or I don't know his situation, but
Yes, that's true. He's not really thinking too much about what he's left behind. But maybe that's a function of two things. Because I was reading a bit about his biography, and I think this isn't the first type of graphic novel where he's an avid traveler, and he does do a lot of books where he does do a lot of work where he's traveling to where he chronicles his travels to sort of like different areas. And maybe he's just used to that a little bit, but it is quite interesting where he's in such a desolate area that he's not really talked about his wife kids.
yeah, it was a very. I guess it doesn't. It's not a missing component, but its absence is felt. I think it also might be for the sake of expedience. Like there's a lot going on in here thematically. Let's not add in the feelings of of missing your family because we're here to talk about
Yeah,
Chernobyl. But maybe.
but I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's no scenes of him, sending emails or calling his wife or family or anything, or even talking to Gilda about how much he wants to get back home.
Yeah.
Really, but he does use. So I write comics myself, and one of the key things that they say is about writing comic books is that you've got a limited amount of real estate, and he does use a lot of real estate on these massive 2-page spreads. And kind of,
Oh
I
yeah.
wouldn't say there's a slow pace to the book. Definitely, he uses a lot of real estate. So maybe like you said, in terms of expediency and actually getting to the heart of the story, maybe some of that stuff was edited.
Yeah. Because a lot of the pace slows way down when he says, "All right, I'm just gonna on these 2 pages, I'm just gonna show you a wide screenshot of the forest." And
Yes.
maybe not for everyone, but I think those spreads took longer for me to look at than if they were full of words. Because a silent shot like that to me means that he was willing to both take up this much space and add no words. So there must be something I can find in this image. So I looked for it, and that's a brave thing to do, I think. You're taking up a lot of real estate with
Hmm.
no
Yeah.
words and a panel that is essentially non sequitur from the rest of the story.
Yes.
So I thought that was kind of genius. I never was mad about it. I was never like, oh man, I really wish you'd get on with the story, or what does this picture of the forest mean? It's not the kind of
Yeah.
book it is.
Let's talk a little bit about the end of the book. So, like the beginning part of the book is his journey to get to the Ukraine, and then the middle part is him coming to kind of terms with the characters and the location, and kind of getting used to being really careful about where he steps. There's an interesting part where he finds this giant mushroom, and that both of them are kind of quite hungry at this point, and they want like fresh produce, and they're thinking, well, if the mushroom's got that big and no one's touched it, it probably means
Yeah,
it's quite badly
yeah.
radioactive.
Which is
Yeah.
a good thought.
So
I would have had the same thought.
yeah. So towards the end of the book, he's kind of just living a normal life there as an artist, really, isn't he? He's kind of
Hmm.
drawing the locals, playing music, and for me, the interesting, like some of the most interesting pages, for example, sort of 122 and 123, is he's in a field and he's kind of sketching, drawing a picture of a horse next to some stables, and then the children kind of come around and say, oh, you know, what are you doing, mister? And he starts drawing kind of the different kids, and there's sketches of two of the children in color.
I wondered there. I had to find some kind of significance because that's just how I am. But maybe there isn't any about those. I couldn't tell if it was one kid. It must be two kids. But what?
Yes,
So they're both just sitting there staring at him as he draws. Is that just them sitting down for a portrait? Am I looking
I
too
think
deeply into
so.
it? Okay.
I I think so. Yeah, yeah. I think it's just two kids sitting down for a portrait. Kind of the kids behind him start throwing flowers and stuff like that. And then yeah, him and Gilda start being at the school as well. So I think the kids, there's something about, you know, him interacting with the kids that played a massive change in the way he feels about Chernobyl. And then there's kind of an interesting thing that he does is on sort of page 142 to 145, where he's doing sort of live sketches of. And I'm assuming this is artwork that's probably featured in uh, the flowers of Chernobyl.
Yeah, I would assume. I loved that part. He just starts sketching like crazy. There's another sketch of Gilda in there, of course. He even throws some color into the sketches, actually, now that I'm looking at it. I'm gonna just jump into random thoughts of what I had on the themes, because honestly, I think this is the kind of book you could fit a lot of different themes into this. It doesn't have, in my opinion, a clear message. It has a few definite messages he was trying to send, but I think overall it's open to interpretation, and that's kind of what he wanted. What I took from this would be hope. I think it was a book about just about hope in general. I think the clear shift to color and the focus on the children towards the end is him kind of saying that there's hope out there, and some of the things that you think they're like this, but they're not like that. Like Chernobyl, you look at the first half and that's what you think of. It's charcoal, it's gray, ruined buildings, radioactive symbols, and then the end, it's just like it could be any town. This could be any place. It's just kids playing in the street and playing hide and seek and stuff. And I honestly thought it was a huge tonal shift, but it felt so natural that I honestly didn't even notice. And then the book was over. It
Yeah,
was just over.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's really sweet. Oh, it's over. It ended so sweetly. I didn't even know what to think. It took me quite a while to process that. What did you get out of it?
What did I get out of it? I It's a big question. I think one of the well, for me, the two. So I went traveling a little bit last year, and you know, I was traveling around Spain for a bit. It's kind of one of the things that I took from it is, you know, when you go to a location, not necessarily to have preconceived ideas of what you're gonna find there, and kind of if you do have these preconceived ideas about what your mission is supposed to be. So I think one of the things he really struggles with in the book is when you're sent somewhere to do a particular thing, but you can't do what's expected of you because he's expected to kind of like do these devastating drawings of dilapidation and
Mm.
poverty and all these things, but he actually finds quite a lot of beauty, and he's just thinking, well, what am I actually doing here? So it's kind of being true to your artistic vision, I think, is another thing
Definitely.
that's quite a strong theme in the book. So even if you've been kind of sent somewhere to do a particular type of drawing,
You're right. It's also kind of about finding your place no matter where you are.
yes,
He doesn't even like he obviously doesn't live here. He's just visiting, but he still feels the need to figure out what he's doing there and why he belongs there, which is a very interesting concept. I don't usually think like that, but he feels compelled to find a reason why he must be there, which is very cool to me. Kind of a it's very introspective.
I think his his struggling with the justification for him being there is quite a strong theme that runs throughout the book because he doesn't want to be one of these kind of a rubbernecker, somebody who's just
Yeah.
coming to do some disaster tourism and kind of be exploitative of the locals. He wants to, if he's going there, he wants to actually serve a purpose and serve the community a little bit, which is yeah.
And you see that he puts on like dinners like for the people. They'll bring their own food and welcome the people into their temporary home. I thought that was really cool. Even right at the beginning, I thought that was really interesting because you wouldn't expect disaster tourists to be having like the people in the village over for dinner and being so welcoming, and it was very cool. I also think that without this good of people in his group, like if this was just a bunch of regular people, it wouldn't have been as interesting because they would
Yes,
just been people been like, "Oh, this is so cool. It's radioactive." But these people aren't there for that.
yeah. I think he was quite indebted to the original translator that they had because I think they went along with like a news crew or documentary crew, didn't they, when they visited? And I think the initial translator they had played a big part in sort of ingratiating them into the local community.
Yeah, they owe a lot to her. You're
And
right.
then, yeah, the second translator, I believe she was actually a local, wasn't she? The
Anya was the first one,
yes,
and the
then
second one, Alana.
yes,
There
Alana,
we go. Yep.
yes, Ilana,
And Vasily, that guy you were talking about earlier, the brave kid.
yeah,
I think he likes
yeah,
both the translators.
yeah, yeah.
That was
He
funny.
comes to life, yeah. Just well, he's a young man. He's going to be on the lookout, isn't
He's a
he?
young man, and I think those
Uh,
may be the only two blonde characters in the whole book.
yeah,
That was that's definitely a good point. I never thought about that. And there, he is very thankful to Anya in the beginning, and I think it can't be understated how this trip could have gone much different if they hadn't had someone
yes,
so professional, I guess.
yes. You briefly mentioned kind of the how hopeful you found the ending. So I think it might be just worth describing what happens in the final panels
Yeah,
of the book. He's kind of he's back home in Paris, and he's showing his children kind of pictures of the pictures that he's drawn. And his children are asking, is this boy dead? Is he dead? Is this person dead? And then kind of I think it's kind of a flashback, and then the very last page is Emmanuel playing tag with a bunch of kids. He's leaping out this building and he's chasing after these children, and one of the kids manages to kind of tag him on the back, and it is a very playful, hopeful um,
colorful.
image to end. Yeah, colorful, and what way to end the book? Yeah,
I honestly
so
thought it was
it's
perfect.
very beautiful. Yeah, yeah. There aren't many panels that are a perfect way to end a book. I mean, yeah, I think that's as close as you can get. It's as close as you can get there. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I mean, I think it's not a super literal ending, but I think thematically it's the perfect ending, and it feels a
Yes.
little like his heart's in Chernobyl at the end, doesn't it? Because he's sitting with his
Yes.
own kids,
Yeah.
he's thinking about playing tag back in Chernobyl, and his own kids are kind of. It's like they only read the first half of the book because
Yeah.
they think everyone like are they dead? Are they dead? Is Grandpa over there? Is it because I guess maybe it's like heaven to them?
Yes. Yeah.
And I assume he's can't even believe it because he has seen the reality.
Yeah.
That's where his mind is. And yeah, that was a
Yeah.
gorgeous, gorgeous ending. You're right.
I think one thing it should kind of be made clear: the book doesn't make Chernobyl like sound like a fantastic place to live,
No.
but it's kind of there is beauty out there, and yeah, it's not. I would say as bad as you might think it is, but if you kind of you should go there with an open heart and an open mind. I think if you were minded to visit it for some reason,
Yeah.
I don't know why you would, but yeah,
Exactly. I think it's not saying move there now. It's saying it's kind of like beauty is everywhere. Like no, there will
yeah,
be just because a person lives in a place that's bad doesn't mean that the person's bad. And in this case, it's the complete opposite. Like these people are beautiful people. I don't think he even at the beginning when he's like this guy's a looter and it's supposed to be kind of ominous. There's no bad characters. No one. I'm trying to think of any bad
yes,
thing that anyone does. I don't think there is a
can't think
single
of
thing,
anything. No,
which I think means he had a great experience there.
the closest thing that I can find to like maybe something that was unpleasant is him worried about whether or not he should accept potentially radioactive
Yeah,
food from someone who's offering, and that's kind of like,
because they don't
not
really
really,
make
yeah,
that choice there. They're just gonna eat it.
yeah, yeah, they're just gonna eat it.
Yeah, that's very true. I love that scene actually. And then they're like, you know what? Sometimes they say I think it happens twice, and once they're like, no, we shouldn't do it. And the other time they're like, all right, let's just dig in. I also think last page you were mentioning when he sits down with his kids. His kids are at grayscale completely, and the
Yes,
pictures of kids from Chernobyl are in full color. That was super interesting.
yes, very, very interesting choice there. I think, like you mentioned before, it's maybe he left a piece of his heart back in Chernobyl. Yeah, maybe he wants to go back there or go traveling again somewhere else. But yes, because his children are grayscale, and then sort of page 163. Um, I thought to me these initial panels looked like someone was. It looks quite sinister. Like the
Mm,
entire page 163 looks kind of like quite a sinister kind of like layout. It's kind of like they're hiding, and there's one voice shushing everyone else, and then obviously that girl's there, and they're scrambling out the window. It's almost reminiscent of like one of these World War II espionage things where like the Jews are trying to escape from like Nazi
yeah,
persecutors, but it turns into kind of this playful, hopeful image of they're just playing tag. So it's a very intelligent use of coloring all the way through the book. Very just he uses color masterfully
you're very
all
right.
the way through.
Panel 3 and 4 on page 165. Yeah, that second to last page. That is masterful misdirection. Like that looks like a bunch of people hiding from an ominous figure, and then when it finds them, they start to run, and it's clearly a bad thing. And then it's just a game of tag. I thought that was, especially for a last minute, one more twist of the knife. I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the panel now, we should have kind of realised it would be a little bit more playful because on 163 the window is green,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's kind of like he uses these colours to hint all the time at kind of what his internal emotional kind of state is, and as he's the last few pages they do colour is kind of a little bit lost in him because I think he's a bit sad about leaving Chernobyl behind. Yeah, this is this book was originally printed in French, and whoever did the translation for the text did a really good job because it's not the easiest thing to do is to translate from one language to another with
yeah.
keeping kind of the spirit and the emotion behind the words there. So whoever did that did a really really good job.
I agree. I've read a lot of books that were originally printed in French, and sometimes you might see like a simple punctuation error or some things like that are common, or like just wording. But oftentimes it's just you lose tone or emotion just based off choice of words. And this was I didn't feel that at all. I guess I've never read the French version, obviously, but I didn't feel this was lacking anything in terms of the words.
Yeah, it's beautifully it's beautifully written. I used to work for a company where I had colleagues who were based in France, and quite often I'd have to proofread documents, marketing documents that they had written in English, and they had excellent English. But again, if with much practice that they've got, they didn't have the fluency as much fluency as a native speaker could have. So they would be kind of odd turns of phrase, and there was none of that in this book. So the editor and the translator really do deserve a great deal of credit for that.
Oh yeah, definitely agree. I wonder if I could actually find the translator for this. Just translation by Edward Gavin, and this is IDW that published this, which kind of astounded
Yes.
me because the other stuff I own by IDW is not French memoirs.
Yeah. Well, I think this book was critically acclaimed. So yeah, it's not one of IDW's
Originals
regular
now.
originals. Yeah, I mean they do kind of. I mean they do a lot of genre stuff, not necessarily superhero stuff, but it's things like Transformers and you know
Yeah, kind of
yeah, that sort of thing.
the licensed. They do a lot of licensed work. Like they
Yeah,
did
kind of.
GI Joe and they did the Transformers,
I
like you
mean, I'm
said.
just looking at a page now, sort of Ducktales and My Little Pony and Star Wars.
Yeah, there's usually stuff like that.
So we're just gonna talk about a little bit about books that are similar to this, but I don't think there are that many. So yeah, if you want to go ahead, Carl.
All right. So I had maybe one. I don't have a lot of books like this. It's similar in that it's a person foreign to where they're visiting, kind of a journalistic approach. But other than that, very different. Safe Area Garazda. I'm not sure how to say Garazde.
Yes, Safe Era Grozny.
Okay, I would never
Yeah,
have ever gotten that. But it's by Joe Sacco. It's more of a wartime journalistic approach. You're not going to get the same hopeful themes, but without getting too deep into it, it's very intense, much more. I don't want to say action, but it is about a place that is at war. So it's a lot darker. There is still a lot of hope there, and there's a lot of, just like this book, interesting character examinations about the people that live in places like this during times like these, basically.
I too would have Joe Sacco works come to mind. His style is very different to Lepage's style. The other two writers that kind of come to mind, one is Guy Delisle. He is again he's a French artist and writer. He does again travelogue books. So he did one Pyongyang where he works as a animation supervisor. So he had to go to Pyongyang to supervise the animators out there, and again sort of similar themes in terms of going to a place and having some of your assumptions confirmed, but then others challenged. So and again, his artwork is both Joe Sacco and Guy Delisle. I'd say more cartoony
Yeah.
styles than Lepage. Is more kind of a classically trained artelier style of almost painterly artwork. And then another book, it kind of sort of brought me to mind, but not really, is Follow Me in by Catriona Chapman, which is a travelogue about her journey around Mexico. Some of the color, I mean, her artwork again is her line work isn't as sophisticated as Lepage's, but her use of color is reminds me a lot of what Lepage was doing as well.
Oh, that is a high recommendation. I
Yeah,
definitely want to check that out now. I hadn't actually heard of either of those last two people. Wow, that was informational for me too.
yeah. I just want to do a bit, sort of, guys. If you're listening to this podcast, I know some of us are on lockdown at the moment, and some of the comic book stores are closed, or you might be furloughed or unemployed. If you want to get access to comics, I'd recommend a couple of different places. So if you've got a mobile phone or an iPad, you can download this app called Libby. And if you're a member of your local library, you should be able to register with Libby on that and download graphic novels from there. And also, Marvel are offering a bunch of free comics on their app, as is Comic House. So Comic House are giving a month's free access to the independent comic books that they have on their app as well. So if you can't afford to buy comics at the moment, those are a few options for you to get your reading fix in.
Oh yeah. I'll add one more actually. I don't know. I think you said Livy is the one, but we have a similar app for libraries here. Maybe it's just my state. I don't even know. But Hoopla is an app. You can register it with your library, and you can get a bunch of free comics that way. It's more of a rental type deal, but I mean, free comics are free comics, especially during when
Yes.
none of us can work. So
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing with Libby. You can borrow them, I think, for 7 or 14 days. But yeah,
all you need is to have a library somewhere near you. So that's a small price to pay for free comics. And the Humble Bundle has been packaging up like entire creators' works and packaging them for from free to just a Humble Bundle model. You pay what you want and you get more if you pay more.
yeah.
So they've been doing that with just various creators. Right now, it's Jonathan Hickman, writer of East of West. Yeah,
Ooh,
you get East of
ooh,
West,
okay.
Manhattan Projects, a bunch of it, the Red Wing, a bunch of his indie stuff, and you'll get almost all of it. So if you're interested in that, go grab that quickly.
Yes, good advice.
Oh yeah, good stuff.
Thank you, Dee. That was really enjoyable.
It was really fun, man. Thank you. Hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, guys, stay the fuck indoors. All
Oh,
right,
please,
so
please.
that's it. Please stay indoors. All right. Hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Hope you
Thanks.
enjoyed, guys.
Bye.